In this video, I want to look at the connection between distance and absolute value. I want to start by looking at how we think about distance. So I'm going to basically start with a number line. Actually, I'm going to look at a pair of number lines. And we're going to have A here and B here on this first number line. In other words, A is less than B up here. And I'm just going to reverse their positions on this bottom number line. In other words, this bottom number line is for when B is smaller than A. Now, distance is usually thought of as the undirected measure of the space between the 2 points. In other words, just to make this a little bit clearer, the distance is going to be this much space in both of these number lines. Now, because it's undirected, I want to think about distance as always being a non-negative number. Distance, by definition, is going to be something that is bigger than or equal to 0. And that brings up a slight problem. In order to calculate the distance, we always want to be looking at the big number minus the little number. That's how we're going to be getting the distance between 2 points. So in this first case, if A is less than B, the distance is going to be the big number B minus the little number A. But down here, the distance is going to be the big number A minus B. And so we've got this problem that we have to deal with in that in order to compute distance, we actually have to know which is bigger, A or B. Now, if we have values, that's not a problem. But if A and B are standing for arbitrary real numbers, we really do want to eliminate this problem of having to figure out who is the big number and who is the small number. And it turns out that the absolute value function gives us the way of dealing with that problem. So I want to recall that the formula for absolute value is that the absolute value of A is equal to A if A is bigger than or equal to 0, and it's equal to minus A if A is less than 0. And it's important to note that if A is less than 0, then minus A is actually a positive number. And a lot of students internalize absolute value as throw away the minus sign, because if I look at the absolute value of something like minus 5, that turns out to be 5. It's important to understand that 5 is minus 5. But there's more going on than throwing away the minus sign. And in fact, throwing away the minus sign is the wrong way to be thinking about absolute values. What I want you to be realizing is that absolute value actually measures the distance between the point A and 0. And let's just look at a pair of number lines to see how this works. So over here, if A is bigger than 0, we have 0 there, we have A here, and the distance is going to be the big number A minus the little number 0, which is going to be A, and because A is bigger than 0, the absolute value of A is also going to be equal to A. So the distance over here is absolute value of A. Now, if I have A is less than 0, and let me make my 0 a little bit clearer. In this particular case, A is less than 0, and the distance is going to be the big number 0 minus A. So that's just going to be minus A. But because A is less than 0, that says the absolute value of A is minus A. And so in this picture too, the distance turns out to be the absolute value of the number a. And it turns out that this particular way of thinking about absolute value, that absolute value gives you the distance between a and 0, is more important than throw away the minus sign. Well, I want to wrap this up by going back to our previous problem of big minus little. And I want to notice that back over here, if I look at b being bigger than a, which is in this case, the distance is going to be the absolute value of b minus a, because b minus a is bigger than 0. Now down here, if I look at b minus a is less than 0. And so that would say the absolute value of b minus a is going to be minus b minus a. But that turns out to be a minus b. So the distance here is also b minus a in absolute value. And that brings up the last thing that I want to stress in this video. The real meaning of an expression like the absolute value of b minus a is that this gives us the distance between a and b. So if I'm looking at something like the absolute value of x minus a, that's going to be the distance between x and a. In the next video, we're going to look at some basic properties of absolute value.